let's assume that you've used your chalk line to split out a fairly straight stave for your bow. The next job is going to be to remove the outer bark. Once that's done, then we'll re-establish the central chalk line on the stave without its bark. My favourite fancy tool for removing the bark is a draw knife. Sharp two-handled blade. We've got a bevel or an angle that goes from the shoulder to the tip of the blade. Yeah, it's quite a steep angle. Instead of using it this way, we turn it over, use it that way. We've got a flatter edge here, and what that will do, it will stop us going too deep into the grain of the wood. I'll show you how I would do this out in the woods. So chock your piece of wood up against a tree stump, into your stomach there, flatter the blade. As I say, don't use the beveled angle, that will cut in too deep. Turn it over, and there, angle of about 45 degrees, really carefully draw it towards you and have a look at the effect you're having. We just need to remove the bark. We don't want to cut into the wood below. I've got a graphic illustration for that, which will demonstrate what will happen if we go too deep. Now here's a nice illustration of what happens if we go too deep. Let's imagine this is our bow stave and we've been really careful to remove the bark, and we start to get a bit careless. If we make a nick in there, which is technically called violating the back fibres, so you're going to be cutting, compromising or violating the fibres that are going to form the back of the bow that the side that faces towards the target. So we've just put a slight nick in there, and under pressure the bow bends, and where do you think it's going to break? Yep, starts to split out just where you've violated those back fibres. If you don't have a draw knife, then make a draw knife. Take your Bushcraft knife, straight handled piece of wood, about the length of your forearm. Find a piece with a knot in it, put the blade into there, get it started, tap it in. And we've chosen a knot there because that's where the wood's good and tough. We don't want the blade to move around and lever itself out of position. I'm going to knock that into the wood now. Fairly deep. Adjust the angle, that's about right for me. And then we can start to use this like a draw knife. We'll be a little bit more careful with this, but still very effective. And remember folks, don't violate your back fibres. So the bark's carefully removed, the centre line is re-established with the chalk line or the charcoal line. Mark the central point of your stave, and then you can mark out to the dimensions you're working with. You can do that in a couple of ways. You can use a tape measure to mark out the width. You could use coins of different sizes. This is just over 1/2 inch. You can mark around the outside edges. Slightly bigger coin out towards the centre if you're making a long bow, be about 1 inch towards the centre. And then join up these lines. So that's a good width marker. Alternatively, you can make a fence out of a piece of wood here, different sizes, 1/2 inch, inch, 1/4 inch. And as you're roughing out the stave going along, I'll give you a good indication as to your progress. Just take a little bit more off there. So a couple of different ways for marking out. We'll now look at axe profiles, and axe is going to be the main tool in roughing out or removing most of the wood from the stave in the initial stages of the shaping of the bow. Does a lot of hard, heavy, rough work. We've got a choice of profiles. Most people will have a standard profile on an axe, which looks a little bit like this. This is fairly convex, designed for splitting out the wood. This is an American plum hatchet, very good hatchet. Slightly too sort of cheeky for working on the wood, i.e. what I mean by that is that the profile, when you look at it like so, is a little bit, when we look at it from above, slightly exaggerated, looks a bit like that. Fairly convex, good at splitting out wood. So that'll do at a pinch, but it's going to be tricky to remove some of the straight bits of wood from the edges. Slightly better profile. This is Swedish Gränsfallsbruk. Now the convex on this is slightly less, so the profile is slightly flatter. Looks a little bit more like that. So slightly flatter along here, so slightly better for shaping wood. Third hatchet we've got here is developed from a British pattern, a Kent pattern. A Kent is a county in the south of England, and when we look at the profile of the axe from above, pretty much like that, so nice and flat here, not too convex. This is a great hatchet. It's probably closer to the shape of an American broad axe, and it's good for shaping or hewing flat planks, which is essentially what we're doing with this stave to make a bow. I've made a slight adjustment on here. What I've done, I've made one bevel edge slightly longer and flatter than the other. So if we look at this in profile, we've got a long flat edge and a slightly steep angle on the other side. So that's going to be great for shearing off pieces of wood in a kind of vertical chopping motion.